Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Dear students, Assalamu alaikum. You're all welcome on online teaching system in University of South Asia. As you know, we are going to start our online lectures by digital learning system in USA. So today we are going to study about the physical agents and electrotherapy too. And we are in week 7 of our semester and we are going to start ultraviolet radiation. As you all know, ultraviolet radiation are basically electromagnetic energy that have a wavelength between 10 nanometer to 400 nanometer. They usually lies between the visible light and X-rays in electromagnetic spectrum. Ultraviolets are invisible to human eyes. Natural source of ultraviolet is sun, as we all know. Sun is a natural source of ultraviolet radiation. Ultraviolet does not only produces the heat, but it may also provoke some chemical changes. These radiation introduced into the tissues through subcutaneous tissues. They also are going to pass through hair follicles and sebaceous glands. There are few generalized responses of ultraviolet radiation. Even these are the responses you are going to experience when you are going to have an exposure with the sun, like sunburn. Sunburn is usually with ultraviolet B type of ultraviolet radiation, erythema, reddening of the skin. The other another effect of the ultraviolet exposure is tanning of the skin. You will also call it pigmentation. There is usually a decrease in the sensitivity of the skin if you are going to have a prolonged exposure of ultraviolet radiation. This decreased sensitivity of the skin and tanning of the skin is basically the protective response of the skin that the skin is going to show towards the unusual exposure of ultraviolet radiation. The fourth one aspect, or you can say generalized response to ultraviolet, is premature aging of the skin. This usually happens with ultraviolet radiation A. Skin cancer is also due to the usually common with ultraviolet B rays. Exposure to eye even causes photokeratitis, and the one of the very beneficial and therapeutic effects of ultraviolet radiation is photosynthesis of vitamin D. There are certain physical barriers of ultraviolet radiation that we are going to face as reflection, diffraction, absorption, and penetration of ultraviolet radiation. There are basically three types of ultraviolet radiation that we are going to choose therapeutically. They are basically ultraviolet A, ultraviolet B, and ultraviolet C. Ultraviolet A have a difference of wavelength with B and C. Ultraviolet A lies between 315 to 400 nanometer. Ultraviolet B lies between 280 to 315 nanometer, while ultraviolet C lies less than 280 nanometer. So they are actually being classified into A, B, C on the basis of their wavelengths. Ultraviolet A are also called long ultraviolet as they have a longer wavelength as compared to B and C, like 400 to 315 nanometer. They are actually non-ionizing in nature. They produce fluorescence in many substances. They penetrate to dermis. They are responsible for development of slow natural tan. While ultraviolet B have a wavelength of 315 to 280 nanometer, they are said to be medium ultraviolet radiation. They are also non-ionizing like ultraviolet A. They produce fluorescence in many substances. They even produces new pigment formation, sunburn, and vitamin D synthesis. Another responsible effect of this is they are responsible for inducing skin cancers. The third one type of ultraviolet is ultraviolet C. Ultraviolet C has wavelengths from 280 nanometer to 100 nanometer. They are ionizing in nature. This is a different effect from A and B. Due to this ionizing property, they are considered germicidal. Germicidal means they are going to kill the bacteria or germs. Cidal means to kill germs. But they usually does not reach to the surface of the sun due to the presence of the ozone layer. The sun dash usually emits ultraviolet radiation, which can often have an effect on the skin, as you all know, like skin burn. But for therapeutic purposes, we had made some generators for its usage. Actually, we need to study the ultraviolet generators just because the construction of ultraviolet generator is very informative for being a physiotherapist because when you are going to practice, you at least know the generation of all these lamps and all these waves from these lamps. So there are three main ultraviolet generators. One is air cooled or high pressure mercury vapor burner. The second one is high pressure mercury vapor lamp, but it is water cooled, also called as cryomer lamp. Third one are fluorescent tubes or fluorescent lamps. Now we are going to discuss in detail the construction of high pressure mercury vapor burner. This is usually a U shape so that it acts more or less a pointed source. The burner is made up of quartz crystal. The property or the reason it is made of quartz is just because the quartz material allows the passage of ultraviolet and can withstand very high temperature and has a fairly low coefficient of expansion. The next is in this tube that is made up of quartz, enclosed in the tube is argon gas at a low temperature. The low temperature is actually due to reduce the resistance, electrical resistance. A small quantity of mercury is also present in the tube. Electrode is sealed on either ends by some metal caps, and around that metal cap there is high potential difference is applied in order to ionize the argon gas. So, in short, we are again going to revise it is a U-shaped funnel that is made up of quartz that contains argon gas at low pressure. It also contains the mercury. Around the ends, which are actually pointed, there are metal caps on which there is a voltage supply. High potential difference is actually being applied. So, what is going to happen and why we need actually high potential difference? As we know, argon gas is a normally extremely stable gas. It is inert because it has a full outer shell of electrons. So, in order to pass a current through this tube of the argon atom, must need to be ionized. So we need high potential difference to ionize the argon gas. So whenever we apply a high potential difference, an electron is stripped from the outermost shell of the atom and produces a negative particle, and a remaining particle is positive particle. So the considerable amount of the energy that actually we use to ionize the argon is obtained by applying a very high potential difference across the metal caps, and this is just for a fraction of a second. Usually, in practice, this is accomplished by pressing the start button on the lamp, which introduces auto transformer in the circuit in order to step up the main voltage of the to 400 volts. Once the argon has ionized, mean you have applied the potential difference and few molecules has been ionized, normal main voltage between the electrodes causes the positive and negative particles to move through the burner, so constituting an electrical current. The electrons move towards the positive terminal and then around the circle, and the positive ions move towards the negative terminal and collects an electron. Overall, exactly the same number of electrons leaves the burner at the positive terminal as enters the negative terminal. As the way as this is two-way movement of the charged particles takes place, cleans between moving ions and neutral argon atoms causes further ionization. So there is a continuous generation of ionized particles to sustain the current flow across the tube. The current flow can be seen as a glowed discharge, and with any electrical current, considerable heat is being produced according to the Joule's law. So eventually, sufficient amount of heat is produced to vaporize the liquid mercury inside the tube, and when the mercury vapors itself become ionized, it means ultraviolet radiation has also been produced. That is partially as energy released by recombination of electrons and positive mercury ions. Partially, it protons releases when excited electrons return from higher quantum shell to the normal shell within the mercury atoms. Now we'll discuss about the total output of the lamp that is being produced. It consists of three types of radiation. One is visible electromagnetic rays, the second one are infrared rays, and the third one are few portion of ultraviolet B and slight portion of ultraviolet C, mean a specific portion of ultraviolet radiation is also being produced. So output is actually consisting of three types of the waves that are emitting from the lamp: visible waves, infrared waves, and ultraviolet forms only a certain portion. The whole process of this argon ionization, mercury vaporization, and ionization actually takes some time. At least a period of 5 minutes elapses between the starting the burner and ultraviolet emission reaches its peak. Once the lamp has turned off, the ions of argon recombines as to the ions of mercury, so that within the tube everything returns to the original normal state. So considerable heat has been generated. This raises the electrical resistance across the tube, so that some time has to elapse, allowing the tube to cool down before it is possible to strike the arc again. This is another effect related to ultraviolet radiation by mercury vapor burner is tritium formation. As we know, this burner is made up of quartz crystal, so the heat produced inside the burner, a quartz tube causes some of it to change to another form of silica called tritium. Tritium is actually a packed to ultraviolet radiation, so output of the rays tends to fall as the proportion of tritium increases. So variable resistance is included in the burner circuit to increase the potential difference across the burner and density of the circuit. So after 1,000 hours of burning, so much might has been formed that the whole burner needs to be repaired. Output can be further reduced if the impurities become adhere with the fingers onto the quartz crystal or tube. So this can be produced by touching the cold burner with the fingers and leaving grease on the tube, or by atmospheric dust being allowed to settle on the tube. The next phase is cooling phase. A considerable portion of the output of the high pressure burner is infrared. As we said, there are three waves that consist of the output, that is infrared radiation, ultraviolet radiation, and visible light. So the infrared radiation, which are when absorbed by the human body, is converted to heat. As you all know, infrared radiation are superficial heating rays. So when a body is being exposed with this infrared waves that are being produced by ultraviolet radiation, they are going to heat up. Consequently, if the lamp is air cooled, closest it can be placed be safely around the patient is 50 centimeter, otherwise a burn may occur. So the burner is usually housed in a parabolic reflector, the position of which can be adjusted on the stand. Ozone formation. The photochemical action of ultraviolet radiation shorter than the 250 centimeter in wavelength on atmospheric oxygen is to form ozone. Ozone is toxic gas for inhalation and partially prevented by good ventilation. The levels of ozone can be detected by smell even with extremely low levels. The next lamp is cryomel lamp. It is also called water-cooled mercury vapor burner. The previously we were studying mercury vapor burner or air-cooled mercury vapor burner. Now, a water-cooled mercury vapor burner, which eliminates the danger of infrared radiation, it has this advantage that it can be used in contact with the tissues or with a suitable applicator to irritate inside a sinus or body cavity. So, if we're going to compare this Crimel lamp with the previous lamp, this lamp can be placed directly in contact with the tissues, while the previous one must be kept at 50 centimeter away from the skin of the patient in order to avoid the burn. Crimel lamps give both ultraviolet A, ultraviolet B, and they are both being used for treating the localized areas as pressure sores, ulcers, and sinuses in open areas. The cryomel lamp consists of high-pressure mercury vapor burner, the working of which is similar to that of the air-cooled lamp. However, it is completely enclosed in a jacket of circulating distilled water, the purpose of which is to absorb the infrared rays. And if the infrared rays are being absorbed, mean the heating effect of the lamp is being to reduce. So a pump and cooling fan arc is incorporated in the body of the cryomel lamp in order to cool the lamp. After use, the water circulates and the water should circulate at least for 5 minutes after the burner is switched off in order to cool the lamp. At the front of primary head, the water circulates between two quartz windows, which allows ultraviolet radiation to emerge out of it. But if a sinus is to be treated, with an applicator of quartz is fixed at the window via special attachment, and these applicators convey the ultraviolet radiation to the tip of the sinus by total internal reflection. They're often long enough and they inevitably absorb some ultraviolet radiation. Therefore, a considerably longer dose must be applied when you are using applicators. Now we'll tell about the spectrum of high pressure mercury vapor burner. Those mean the output of the mercury vapor burner. As we were discussing about the output of mercury vapor burner, there is of three types: ultraviolet radiation, visible electromagnetic radiation, and infrared electromagnetic radiation. Only a very small portion of ultraviolet C is being produced, C mean less than 280 nanometer, and the majority of ultraviolet being produced by this lab by ultraviolet A and ultraviolet B. These are two tools for the measuring of the output of burner, phototube and thermopile. Like phototube is actually able to measure the output of burner that can be achieved using a phototube which is calibrated for a particular wavelength, like 365 nanometer. It can only calculate or measure a single wavelength. The absorption of this wavelength by the tube produces electrical current, which can be read as by an ammeter. The higher the current, the greater the amount of the ultraviolet radiation at this wavelength. The next is thermopile. A thermopile produces an electrical current which is proportional to the total amount of ultraviolet and not to a specific wavelength. This is for the total amount of ultraviolet and not for any specific wavelength. Now we are going to discuss the fluorescent tubes for ultraviolet radiation. The fluorescent tubes basically are being used in order to avoid the few of the problems we are going to face with mercury lamp. So one of the major problems that we are facing with the mercury lamp is there is production of certain portion of shorter ultraviolet, mean ultraviolet C. So in order to eliminate this ultraviolet C from the lamp, we are going to use some modern type regimes with the fluorescent tubes that often require the use of local long wave ultraviolet without the short wave. So these tubes are going to help. The spectrum of each tube depends upon the type of the phosphorus coating inside it, and each tube is about 120 centimeter long and made of a type of glass which allows long wave ultraviolets to pass. The inside of the tube is coated with a special phosphorus. A low pressure arc is set up inside the tube between its ends by the process of ionization, similar to that described for the mercury vapor tube. Shorter ultraviolet is being produced, but is produced by the phosphorus and re-emitted at a longer wavelength. So depending upon which particular phosphorus is being produced, the output of tube may be part of B, ultraviolet A, or totally ultraviolet A. Then there is a utilization of these fluorescent tubes in Tharakitten tunnel. A Tharakitten tunnel is a semi-cylindrical frame in which there are mounted four tubes. Like you can see in this picture, this is a picture from your book, that in this is a parabolic reflector and there are four like semi-cylindrical tunnel and with their four like tubes, fluorescent tubes in the parabolic reflector. What they are going to do is each tube is mounted in its reflector in such a way that they causes even irradiation of the patient, allowing the patient to have whole treatment in two halves. Normally, the fluorescent tubes with a spectrum of 280 or 200 to 400 nanometer are being used. This is PUAVA means Soraline ultraviolet A apparatus, and irradiation with ultraviolet A only may be performed with special fluorescent tubes which may be mounted in a vertical battery or in a wall on its four sides, totally surrounding the patient. This form of ultraviolet is usually given 2 hours after the patient has taken a photoactive agent called Soraline drug. Hence, this term PUVA PUVA or Soraline ultraviolet A is named for this purpose. Now, the point is what is Soraline and what is the relationship of Soraline only with ultraviolet A? Why not with B and with C? So for this, we have to understand a term named as photosensitization. And soon we are going to discuss photosensitization. Anyways, I'm going to tell you something about photosensitization. Photosensitization is basically a response, mean enhanced response of the skin towards ultraviolet radiation. So if a person has taken ultraviolet, oh sorry, if a person has taken a sorilin, what is going to happen is the cells or tissues are now more able to absorb more amount of ultraviolet. They show more sensitivity for ultraviolet radiation. There are certain filters that are being used in ultraviolet generators, like absorption done by window glass, vita glass, water for infrared radiation, Chance Cruxe for absorption of ultraviolet used in a goggles. Blue UV glass is also being used. Transmission is done by oxides of nickel gas, Wood's filter, Chance ultraviolet gases. Substances that can be used instead of blue UV filter are xylophone, liquid paraffin, and cod liver oil. Now we are going to discuss photosensitization. Photosensitization is an enhanced response of the skin to ultraviolet radiation. The agent that is responsible for this photosensitization is basically a chemical that is present in the skin. So which absorbs ultraviolets and transfers the energy to adjacent tissue molecules in a photochemical reactions. Photosensitizers can also be ingested and can even be applied directly to the skin. The one that can be ingested are like Soraline and certain drugs, and some of them can be locally applied, such as coal tar. So many of the drugs and foods may even increase the individual's reaction to ultraviolet radiation. So in practical terms, this means the patient must inform the physiotherapist when starting in and stopping the course of the drugs. There are certain drugs or certain foods that causes the photosensitization like soraline, coal tar, sulfonamide, like so many other antibiotic, quinolones, insulin, strawberry, lobaster. ag, and alanine dye. Now we're going to discuss the physiological effects of ultraviolet radiation. Previously, we were studying about the generators and a few basic terms or some instruments about measurement of ultraviolet radiation. So now we're going to start or discuss in detail the physiological effects of ultraviolet radiation, like cancer, erythema production, tanning, epidermal hyperplasia, peeling, vitamin D synthesis, solar elastosis and aging, antibiotic effects, other effects of ultraviolet radiation. Cancer. Carcinogenesis is a danger if there is a long exposure to ultraviolet B and C, as these rays may have an effect on the DNA, thus on cell replication. Has been actually considered or called as a universal carcinogen by Blum in 1976. So prolonged exposure of the patient's skin to the shorter ultraviolet rays should be avoided and the course of treatment should always not exceed more than 4 weeks. Even the longer wave ultraviolet is not beyond the suspicion as a carcinogenic agent. Thus, patients of solanine ultraviolet A or on sunbaths may well still be at risk by Hashre in 1983. Careful monitoring of the amount of the ultraviolet is actually required for the patient dosage plan. The next response of ultraviolet is erythema. Erythema is the redness of the skin. This is due to the dilation of the superficial blood vessels caused by the release of histamine. So one of the most obvious effect of the exposure of ultraviolet is erythema. So whenever you're exposed to sunlight in summers or even in winters when you are going to have an exposure with the sunlight, you will notice after some duration or certain time, the skin become red or slightly pink. This is basically due to the release of histamine and due to the dilation of superficial blood vessels. Erythema is basically produced primarily in response to ultraviolet B exposure or in response to ultraviolet A exposure after drug sensitization. So the erythema response of ultraviolet B is equal to ultraviolet A exposure, but ultraviolet A along with drug sensitization has the same amount of erythema response as that ultraviolet B. So without drug sensitization, ultraviolet A is considered to be 100 to 1000 times less potent in inducing the erythema that is being produced by ultraviolet B. So with sensitization, the erythemal efficacy of the ultraviolet A is similar to that of ultraviolet B alone, the less risk of overexposure and even less risk of burning. The precise mechanism of this erythema is unknown, but still it is considered that prostaglandin release might occur from the epidermis. It may be also be due to the DNA damaging effect of ultraviolet radiation. So the severity of erythema can be produced blistering, tissue burning, pain, and the risk of the cell damage, and the primary factors limiting the frequency and intensity of the exposure used clinically. The erythemal reaction has been classified into certain doses that we are going to give to the patient. We're soon going to classify in 4 doses E1, E2, E3, and E4, and with certain other effects we'll discuss them. The next response of the skin was ultraviolet radiation is tanning. Tanning is basically a delayed pigmentation of the skin. It develops within 2 days of ultraviolet exposure. What happens that ultraviolet radiation exposure stimulates the melanocytes in the skin and produce melanin, which is then passed to the numerous adjacent cells. This melanin forms an umbrella over the nucleus of the cell and protects it from ultraviolet radiation. Basically, what happens is when a person's skin is actually being exposed or going to have an exposure of ultraviolet radiation for continuously for 2 days, what is going to happen is it actually senses that something or some rays are actually going to give me. So tanning is basically a protective response of the skin. The skin stimulates as melanin hormone, and this melanin hormone is going to act like an umbrella of the nucleus of the cell, and thus going to protect the skin from ultraviolet radiation exposure. Pigmentation substantially reduces the penetration of ultraviolet to deeper layers. The tanning is considered to be a protective response of the body. This is a table you can see There are standard doses of ultraviolet E1 to E4 classified by rhythm reaction. So this is all about E1. This is the latent period of E1. This is in this period it appears to slide pink. While this it does not faces any pigmentation. I'll tell you about pigmentation and decomposition soon in the coming slides. It does not have any like decomposition. With E2, which has a latent period of 4 to 6 hours, the skin is red, slightly pink with the powdery shades. Third one is E3, in which the skin appears very red and painful. Pigmentation occurs markedly, and descamization also occurs in sheaths. While E3 is similar to E4, but in E4 there is formation of blisters. The next, another very protective response of the skin is epidermal hyperplasia. So what it is, hyperplasia is something increase in the number of cells. Sudden overactivity of the basal layer of epidermis causes a marked thickening, particularly of the stratum corneum, the outermost layer of the skin, which may become as much as 3 times its normal thickness. So it occurs usually approximately after 72 hours exposure to ultraviolet radiation. So with the repeated use, eventually results in thickening of both the dermis and stratum corneum that persists for several weeks. And this effect is again due to the release of prostaglandins in response to that ultraviolet radiation, and these prostaglandins increase the DNA synthesis by epidermal cells and increase epithelial cell turnover and causes cellular hyperplasia. Epidermal hyperplasia is most pronounced with ultraviolet B exposure. It is also thought in order to protect the skin from exposure, tanning and epidermal hyperplasia both are going to protect it from higher doses of ultraviolet radiation. So, as they are both going to prevent, we need progressively high doses of ultraviolet radiation to complete our clinical course of treatment with ultraviolet. For example, an E1 dose must be increased by 25%, E2 dose is being increased by 50%, and E3 by 75%. The next effect is peeling and decomposition. This is the increased thickness of the epidermis. The increased thickness of the epidermis is actually eventually being lost as a decomposition or by peeling. When this happens, the resistance of the skin to ultraviolet is substantially being lowered down. It occurs after several weeks. The next effect is vitamin D synthesis. Ultraviolet radiation of the skin is necessary for the conversion of ingested provitamin D to vitamin D. So vitamin D acts to control the calcium absorption and exchange. It is an essential vitamin for bone and teeth formation. It also influences the brain, kidney, intestine, and endocrine functions. Vitamin D deficiency can also result in poor intestinal absorption of the calcium and cause rickets. Rickets is a basically disease that is characterized by failure of bone mineralization. Rickets can be due to the result of inadequate exposure of ultraviolet radiation, maybe due to inadequate intake of vitamins. It may be due to poor kidney function. And there are a number of the patients that does not have exposure to ultraviolet, so they develop rickets. Those who live in houses and does not sit in grounds or in sunlight, and those that work in mines, or those that are bedridden or elderly or in ICUs and hospitals or those who are paralyzed, they are not being exposed properly towards ultraviolet radiation. Although for the most of the individual, the exposure to ultraviolet in sunlight is sufficient to maintain the adequate levels of vitamin D production. Ultraviolet radiation promotes the production of vitamin D and reduces the osteoporosis, and thus the frequency of fracture and is being reduced in bedridden patients, like those who are going to have fracture in ICU, stroke, paralysis, and especially the elderly patients who have a sedentary lifestyle. It is also going to reduce the frequency of fractures or going to improve the production of vitamin in those who work for long hours in underground environments, like in submarines or in mines, hospital bound groups of elderly patients. The patient group are more at risk from the dangers of ultraviolet, like they are going to have carcinomas and cataracts, but with careful monitoring of the dosage, the benefits may outweigh the risk. Another effect of ultraviolet radiation is solar elastosis and aging. The normal aging process of the skin is accelerated if there is a continued exposure of ultraviolet radiation because it results in thinning of the epidermis, loss of epidermal ridges, loss of melanocytes, dryness as a result of poor function of sebaceous and sweat glands, wrinkling from the lack of dermal connective tissues. So these effects are often seen in people of the fair skin races who live in very sunny climates such as in Australia or South Africa, or extreme examples in the faces of the farmers and sailors where the wrinkles are marked. Sunbathers should also be aware about the progressive cumulative effects of the prolonged ultraviolet exposure. The second last or almost last physiological effects of ultraviolet is antibiotic effect. Shorter ultraviolet rays can destroy the bacteria and other organisms, such as fungus, commonly found in wounds. Experimental evidence has shown E4 dose effectively destroys all such organisms, and ultraviolet C is also considered to be ionizing and germicidal. Other effects of ultraviolet radiation is ultraviolet radiation has also been shown to affect the immune system. It is proposed that these effects are dose dependent, such as with low doses the immune system is being suppressed, and with the high doses the immune responses is being activated. It has also been reported that ultraviolet C in adequate doses is bactericidal. Now we are going to start the indication of ultraviolet radiation. Indication mean the condition in which we can use ultraviolet radiation. So after the studying in detail the physiological effects of ultraviolet radiation, we are able to understand that in which condition due to certain physiological effects they can be easily being used, and what should be the contraindications or what can be the possible adverse effects and what can be the possible precautions for ultraviolet radiation. So ultraviolet is being used in the treatment of skin condition and for infected lesions of the skin, for non-infected lesion of the skin, like skin conditions like acne and psoriasis. Acne is a skin condition which presents pustules, papules, comedones, blocking the hair follicles and sebaceous glands on the face, back, and chest. An E2 dose of ultraviolet radiation may be given with the following aims. Erythema will bring about more blood to the skin and so to improve the condition of the skin. Desquamosation will remove the comedones and allow the free drainage of sebum and thus reduces the number of the lesion. So whenever you are going to improve the circulation of those tissues, you are actually going to give it more oxygen, more nutrition, more foodstuffs, and going to wash away the wasteful products and the metabolites. So ultraviolet also have a sterilizing effect on the skin. The intensity of the dose needed is E2 plus, that is often painful and cosmetically uncomfortable for the patient. The next condition is psoriasis. Psoriasis is a common, benign, acute, chronic inflammatory skin lesion. Based on the genetic predisposition, it is characterized by bright red flags with silvery scales, usually on the knees, elbows, scalp, and is associated with mild itching. The dermatological symptoms may also be associated with arthritic symptoms known as psoriatic arthritis. Phototherapy of the psoriasis with ultraviolet has a history of more than 75 years. And 1925, Gogerman introduced a combination of topical coal tar and subsequent ultraviolet radiation. And this treatment was much popular for half a century. Now we'll discuss the therapeutic efficacy of ultraviolet radiation for the patient of psoriasis. As ultraviolet radiation is being used to decrease the rate of DNA synthesis in the cell of the skin and thus they slow down their proliferation. So treatment of the patient of psoriasis can be done by using laser regime or Soranil ultraviolet A treatment. This treatment was first introduced by Tenoir and Skigul in 1972. Psoriasis is actually most responsive to ultraviolet A administered in conjunction with oral or topical solar sensitization and is almost very effective or responsive towards the narrow band of ultraviolet B alone. It is minimally not responsive to ultraviolet C or minimally responsive to ultraviolet A alone without drug sensitization. The next is Lee's regime. In Lee's regime, the sensitivity of patient skin is enhanced by the local application of coal tar, where that is actually added by through bath prior to the treatment. Nitranol cream is also being used after the treatment with the drug, with the drug coal tar and ultraviolet radiation. A subarrhythmal dose is given to the patient using a thallic internal and a cool lamp at 100 cm. Dose is repeated daily, increasingly 12.5% each time the psoriasis improves improve with subarrhythmal dose, but it is aggravated by actual sunburn or dose of fever. Soraline ultraviolet A. So the patient on Soraline ultraviolet A regimes take a sensitizing drug that is delivered from Soraline 2 hours before the exposure to ultraviolet radiation. Soraline in the nucleus of the cells binds to the DNA in the presence of ultraviolet A and thus inhibits the DNA synthesis and prevents the cell division. So dosage of Soraline ultraviolet A regime is measured in joule per centimeter square, which means that the output of generator needs to be monitored regularly with special apparatus. Dosage also depends upon the patient's skin type, and the progressive increase are being made in terms of energy density. The following skin types are described for the most reactive to the least reactive. Now, type 1 skin is always burn, never tan. Type 2 skin is always burn, slight tan. Type 3 is sometimes burn, always tan. Type 4 is never burn, always tan. Type 5 is moderately pigmented skin, Ruthenian Mongolites. And number 6 is heavily pigmented skin. For example, the patient with the skin type 1 have their minimal doses, one which produces slight erythema within the 72 hours of radiation increased by zero point 0.5 joules per centimeter square at each treatment. The sensitizing soldering drug means that these patients must avoid sunlight and wear dark glasses during the daylight to protect the eyes. However, this treatment is not without its risk. The next is use of ultraviolet radiation for infected skin wounds. Ultraviolet may be used for the treatment of infected skin wounds such as ulcers, pressure sores, or surgical incisions. The aim of ultraviolet is to destroy the bacteria, remove the slough, and promote the repair process. Ultraviolet B is normally used to achieve this, being applied locally to the lesions through primer lamp, and E3 and E4 doses usually required. So what you have to memorize is especially about the doses for infected skin lesions, for acne, and for psoriasis, and for other diseases. Progressive increase of the dose is unnecessary as there is no skin over the wound. Non-infected wounds. Once the infection has cleared, it has never been present. The aim of ultraviolet is to stimulate the growth of granulation tissue and it speeds up the process of repair. Shorter ultraviolet rays damage the granulation tissues, and whereas the longer ultraviolet wave stimulates the growth. Consequently, some of the filter is being used with allow ultraviolet A to be emitted but not to the B. So this filter may be bluish oil glass or cellophane. The next is use of ultraviolet radiation for the intact skin. Intact skin may be treated with ultraviolet if if it is in the pressure area that is likely to break down. An E1 dose is given in order to increase the circulation through the area and improve the skin conditions. Those may be done for more resistant conditions such as children's. Counter irritation. Historically, ultraviolet can also be used to produce a strong counter irritating effect of the site of the deep seated pain, especially like lumbar spine pain. And E3 and E4 doses are given, and the area has also been covered with dry dressing. Theoretically, the superficial pain produced by the erythema should mask the deeper pain, and modern pain modulation theories would justify that this is a mean of producing endogenous opioids from the periaqueductal gray matter. Provided that some other treatments was instituted in this period of relief, like exercise, and some long-term benefits through thought to be possible. This use of ultraviolet has now been largely superseded by other forms of the treatment. The next are certain contraindications for the use of ultraviolet radiation, like irradiation of the eyes, skin cancer, pulmonary tuberculosis, cardiac and kidney and liver tissue issues, and systemic lupus erythematosus and fever. Contraindication basically means the condition in which you are not allowed to use ultraviolet radiation. Means the application of ultraviolet radiation is contraindicated to eyes. Ultraviolet of the eye should be avoided. They can be avoided by having the patient wear ultraviolet opaque goggles through the treatment, by having the therapist wear ultraviolet opaque goggles when at risk of radiation, such as when turning the ultraviolet lamp on or off. Patient having ultraviolet sensitizing drugs such as Soraline should also continue to wear ultraviolet opaque goggles, must have protection from ultraviolet raise for 12 hours at least after they have taken these drugs. It is generally recommended ultraviolet radiation not to be used in patients with pulmonary tuberculosis, cardiac or kidney or liver diseases, systemic erythematosus, or with fever, because these conditions may be exacerbated by the exposure of ultraviolet radiation. The next would be the precaution, the reverse effects, and techniques of application that we will continue in coming lecture. So hopefully everybody is going to have a good experience with this online teaching system. And I'm thankful for all the students who are going to listen this lecture and going to join me. Thank you. Have a good time.